to take a leap, to bet on yourself. Sometimes we bet on others before we bet on ourselves. And so I've had so many opportunities to bet on myself and win. And so now I want to encourage people, bet on yourself and watch God. Watch him help you win.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hearne on the Map with Jamichael Deshawn. I'm so fortunate and happy to have this guest with me today, someone who I've known pretty much my entire life. She is a motivator, an encourager that empowers women to become the best versions of themselves. She is currently a senior consultant for an education consulting firm. She also was a director of new teacher development at the Texas Kid Public Schools. She has served as a principal, an assistant principal, a counselor, and a teacher. She has her doctorate, from U of H, her master's and bachelor's from PV. And she is a Hearne High School class of 99 graduate. 99. And she is a loving mother of one. She's none other than the Dr. LaTonya S. Smith.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. It is an absolute pleasure. I've been telling people about the list of people that I wanted to interview, and you were one of the first people that came to mind that I wanted to chat with.
Thank you so much. I am honored to be here.
What's your Hearne background? What was it like growing up in Hearne? Because, Hearne has a special place in our heart. So
Hearne raised me. I am who I am because of the community. I think when I think about Hearne and I talk to people about Hearne, it was the most enriching experience ever. Growing up in a small town, growing up in a community of folks who love you, they love you, they care about you. Seeing that Black excellence and not being new to you, like when you go away, Black excellence is actually the standard. So when I think about like the 5th grade teachers that I had, and you think about those teachers that impacted your life, that was the standard. That wasn't unusual. So when I went away and went to college, it was, this isn't new. This is how it's supposed to be, And so the community raised me. The community taught me values. The community taught me hard work. It taught me, it grounded me in the word. And I am who I am because I'm a product of Hearne. And so I have a deep love for the community and what it was and what it can become. So definitely proud to share that I'm a product of Hearne.
Yes. I love that. I'm honestly curious of what you think about like the excellence now. Like, I don't know. That's so interesting that you said that, because I don't know. Do you feel like the kids or young people today are getting that same example that you had when you were growing up?
Yes and no. Let me say that. I think our teachers were old school, right? And they were old school. And I think the times have just changed, but I think the richness of Black excellence in Hearne is still there. And so I think that, there are educators that are still in the schools that are doing phenomenal things. I think about my classmate, Dee Dee. I think about Tab. I think about these people that are still there in the trenches. And so, yes, there's still Black excellence there. I think it's just different and the times have changed. But our teachers were old school, like Miss Williams, Miss Washington, Miss Davis, Miss McDaniel. Like, they were just old school. You knew what to expect from them. They demanded respect, so they taught you how to, but they also gave you respect, right? And so they taught us that everyone should be respected. And that respect is not necessarily earned, it's given. And that when you make mistakes, you have to kind of work that back around. But they were just phenomenal women. And it was just, I was very fortunate to be a part of that culture. But I think it's still there. I think the times have just changed. The generations are different. And what kids are exposed to is different. So educators have to work a little differently to impact the lives of their students. They're working against a lot of different things that not only students are exposed to, but parents are exposed to, community is exposed to. So the times are just different, but the opportunities, I think, are still there.
Yeah. Wow. I just love how you brought that together. You still give the community like the grace and like respect that Hearne deserves. And, you know, so many things have been changing for us so soon over the past 2 years. So I can only imagine what the people who are there doing the work are going through.
Absolutely.
So you talked about the values, everything that the Hearne community gave you to get to where you are now. What can you tell me about your journey to Dr. LaTonya Smith? You went to PV and so many things have happened up until now.
Yeah, I went to Prairie View, the only choice. That was the only place to go. So I went to Prairie View. At Prairie View, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. And then I landed into teaching after I think I was volunteering at a daycare or something, and then I kind of landed into teaching. And so graduated with my degree in education, started working in Houston ISD as an elementary teacher. Quickly discovered that elementary is not my calling. That was not my thing. Kids still cry in 5th grade. You still got to walk them to the restroom. That just wasn't my thing. So I decided I needed to move up to middle school. So I moved up to middle school to be an English language arts teacher. Loved middle school. That is my jam. I say all the time, either you are, born to be an elementary teacher, like a kindergarten teacher, or a middle school. Like those are callings. Middle school is rough, right? So I stayed in middle school while working. I got my master's from Prairie View, and then eventually became a middle school counselor. So stayed a middle school counselor for a while. I think after like my 5th or 6th year, I decided that I wanted to then help teachers become better teachers, because even as a counselor, I was still going back into the classroom, coaching teachers and developing teachers, and just really teaching teachers how to build relationships with students to get results. And so I decided I wanted to get my doctorate, and I didn't know really what that looked like. I didn't know anybody that had really gone through the process. And so I remember calling the University of Houston. I called the department's head. I called the office, and I just wanted to talk to the secretary to ask questions, because I have tons of questions. Anybody that knows me knows I ask questions. And so I had a list of questions. And so I called the office, and the actual department head answered the phone, and she was like the only African-American professor in the department.
Oh, wow.
And she answered the phone, and I introduced myself, and then I said, well, I was calling because I had questions, and I said, are you the person? And she was like, yeah, it's me. And so I was like, oh, and I froze. I didn't have my question. I couldn't answer the questions because I was like caught off guard that she answered the phone.
Yeah.
And so she was like, well, why don't you come and meet me in person and then have your questions together? And so I did. I went and met her in person. Her name is Dr. LaVera Hutchinson. She is phenomenal, still at the University of Houston. And I had a meeting with her, and I told her my goals. She answered all my questions, and I told her I had a goal of finishing in 3 years. And she was like, oh, that's a little ambitious if you work a full-time job. And she was like, but if you come and work for me as a full-time doc student, I will, you'll have a salary. It won't be your salary that you're making as a counselor, but I'll help you get some scholarships and you can enroll full-time. And I was like, I can't enroll full-time. Like, I have bills, I have a car, I have all these things. And the salary was like nothing as a doc student. And so she said, well, think about it. And but she was like, first you got to get in, you got to apply. So I studied for the GRE, I got accepted. And then I had to decide if I was going to actually enroll. And so I did. God said, do it. And I did not have a plan, like literally did not have a plan other than I knew I had to downgrade.
Come on,
so God. I downgraded from my apartment. I quit my job. Mind you, I have a salary. I quit my job. I moved into this 350 square feet efficiency apartment.
Oh.
And I enrolled at U of H as a full-time student. And it was one of the best decisions of my life, but it was also one of the hardest decisions Mind you, I didn't have money. I didn't have a plan mapped out. All I knew is Dr. Hutchinson said she was going to give me a job. So she gave me a job. The first year I had to take out some loans. I lived, in this little apartment, almost lost my mind, by the way. I only stayed there one semester and then I had to move into like on campus. So long story short, I did that. The second semester I was there, I applied for scholarships, got tons of scholarships to help me finish my education at U of H. And finished and finally graduated in 2011. I enrolled in 2008. I graduated in 2011 with my doctorate.
Yes.
My goal was to be a college professor. But after all of the research and all the time in doing the research, I realized I really miss kids. And like being a professor is really theory in nature, but I'm a practitioner and I realized I was a practitioner. So I went back to K through 12 and I went back into a counseling role, which is what I didn't want to do, but I went back into a counseling role, eventually became an assistant principal and eventually found my calling into being a principal. Eventually, I kind of ran away from it for a while, but, and then from there, I got an opportunity at KIPP and moved up into a director role where I oversaw new teacher development for the state of Texas. So I helped create their initiative for all of their new teachers in Texas.
Wow.
And love the work that I was doing at KIPP, and then got this opportunity in March of 2020 to serve as a senior consultant for Maya Consulting that's based in Austin to do a lot of awesome projects. I do a lot of project management, strategic planning, support for different education agencies throughout Texas and other states. And so I'm really fortunate for the opportunity. And I really believe it started with that first step of like quitting my job and taking like enrolling as a doc student at U of H. I think that was a really tough decision, but it opened doors for so many other opportunities. So that's a long version of how I got here.
Look, I love the journey. It seems like you trusted God in situations where you had no idea where you were going, but you had an end goal in mind. So in between, something
I have so many
carried
stories,
you.
believe me. I have so many faith walk stories, but yeah.
I love that, Tonya. What I actually want to ask this question because I've been talking to a couple of teachers that are working right now in Hearne, and it's been a challenging year already. And so I'm curious of what are your thoughts on what is happening right now, or like what is something that can we do as a community or people from the community to kind of shift the culture that can support what is happening like right now in the world? That's a huge question. You may not even be able to answer it, but I was just curious of what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer, honestly, but at first I don't think that it's just a challenge in Hearne. I think in light of COVID and all the things, I talk to teachers all over and it's tough everywhere. And I've had conversations with educators from Hearne who talked about how difficult it was prior to COVID, right? And I think I don't have an answer because I'm not in the community anymore, so I don't know all of the pieces. But I think in order for a school to be successful, that it has to be seen as a part of the community. It has to be a community effort. And so teachers and administrators and the folks that work in the school can't do the work alone. Education should be a community effort. Should be, we should be working with parents. We should be working with community members, students. Everybody is a stakeholder into making the system great. But the system alone cannot function in isolation. It has to be a community effort. And so when decisions are being made about school, that should be a community decision, right? Like every voice at the table matters, from the students to the elderly community member who doesn't have any kids in the school. Like the school is a part of the community. And so we have to think about making decisions in a community. And I think that's what I do a lot of coaching for districts now is, well, have you talked to parents? Have you talked to community members? Have you talked to business owners? Have you talked to the teachers? Have you talked to the administrators? Like, who's making these decisions for people?
Yeah.
And so the people at the top tend to just make decisions for everything in the school.
Yeah.
It can't happen that way. It has to happen in I do a lot of reading about this design called liberatory design. And liberatory design talks about, like, you have to do it in community, and every voice in that community has to be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And I think that from there you get answers. So I can't give you answers because every voice and every member hasn't been heard. But if you bring them to the table and we talk about needs and we talk about values and we talk about how people want to be seen and heard and how people want to heal, because there's healing that needs to take place.
Yes.
Then you come up with solutions. But I think we go about it the wrong way, talking about this is the problem and this is the solution. That's not how you come up with solutions. It has to be done in community.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I that's something that I've been thinking about recently, because, you know, I'm not living in Hearne and I don't see myself continuing to live in Hearne in that capacity, but I'm always thinking about it. And I realize like, it's literally not about the school. It's about what happens outside the school that affects how the school thrives. So that is so true for what you just said. Yeah. But you spoke about healing, and I want to kind of tie this into what you do now on social media. You're a motivator. You're encouraging people. LaTonya Smith, that's the page, right?
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into this thing. So yeah. When I'm curious. Talk about it. I don't know.
Well, like, I want to ask you, what's one obstacle that you had to face getting to where you are now that you may not have shared up until this point? Because we have listeners, we have young women who would like to change their situation, or who would like to live lives of purpose and abundance. And is there something that you have to share, to drop with us today?
So I recently in 2020 went through a divorce. And the journey of the divorce itself really brought me to a place of embracing who I am and embracing my voice and embracing my needs, and putting myself first. And I think a lot of times we as women, we don't do that well. We put everybody else before we put ourselves. And so my healing journey actually began before, and I shared this with you, it began before I got a divorce. I really wanted to be a better version of myself, initially for my son. I wanted him to see the best version of me, so that he can become the best version of himself. And so he triggered me. I always say Carson is my why. He triggered me to get better, to embrace myself, to love myself, to make myself a priority. And in that process of making myself a priority and listening to my needs, I started like healing. And so now I'm at a space of, I feel like healing is an ongoing journey. There are things that I have to do every single day to put myself into a good space. Sometimes I have to forgive people every day, the same person over and over again, like the same thing, forget. And I think sometimes we think we forgive somebody and then we're done. No. Sometimes I have to wake up the next day and forgive that same person. And so I have been intentional about my healing journey. And I think that means prioritizing myself and what's good for me. And what's good for me will then be good for others. But I have to make myself a priority. And so I think I'm in a space now of being healed and sharing my journey with others, that I want to now encourage other women to do the same. Yeah. To make themselves a priority, to take a break when you need to take a break, to walk away when you need to walk away, to say no when you need to say no, to take a leap, to bet on yourself. Sometimes we bet on others before we bet on ourselves. And so I've had so many opportunities to bet on myself and win. And so now I want to encourage people, bet on yourself and watch God. Watch him help you win. Yeah. And so I talk to so many women who are like, oh, I just don't know if I can do this. I don't know, what God wants me to do. I don't know how to do it. I can't do this. I can't do it. And I tell them all the time, just, okay, if you don't want to bet on yourself, bet on him. Bet on him. Trust him enough to bet on him.
Yeah.
But you have to do, if you're thinking about it, you need to do it. Just do it. Don't stay in a place that you're not welcome because you don't trust the process. Like, if you're not welcome, you're not welcome. It is okay to leave. But I think for far too long, we stay in places and spaces that don't serve us well. And it's because we don't, I don't know if we don't feel empowered enough to do it. I don't know if we are afraid. I think a lot of it is we're afraid of the process. But I just want to tell women to bet on God. Even if you can't bet on yourself, trust him, bet on him, and he will get you through it.
That was a word. I may need to take a pause just to take that in. Bet on God.
Yeah.
Bet on God, or bet on yourself.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I appreciate that, Tonya, so much. I know I can talk, we can talk all day and just like, talk about healing and growing. I too have had to work on my own healing process. And in so many ways, we have to heal ourselves first forgive ourselves first.
Yeah, forgive yourself first.
And then forgive so many other people. And forgiveness is a continuous journey. But it's, I don't know, that forgiveness and that gratitude for what the challenges that you have had, it kind of makes you like lighter, I made it through.
I think that is so good. The point about, actually, I was going to do a post about like, forgive yourself first and then forgive others, because forgiveness, sometimes we're thinking, oh, we just need to forgive that person. But a lot of times we need to first forgive ourselves because we allowed it to happen and we beat ourselves up so much for allowing things to happen. But that's a part of the journey, right? Like, that is a part of the journey. Forgive yourself and move on. That is like the first step. So I'm glad you said that and brought that point up, because that's powerful.
Yeah. Whew. All right. So we're down to the fast five.
Okay.
The fast five is a series of questions that I didn't tell you what they are before now. It's fun. It's something like cool. And I like to hear what people's thoughts are.
Okay.
So the first one is, what do you like about being from Hearne?
I feel homegrown. I don't even know if that's a thing. Like, I feel proud. I feel like I'm still connected to the community, even though I don't live there. I feel like it's always home. I love that I can always go home, and I feel seen at home. I feel heard at home. I feel valued at home. I feel loved at home. So I feel like I love the fact that I'm from Hearne and it's always my community. I'm always a part of the community. Even if I go home and stay in my house with my parents and nobody knows I'm there, it's still home. So I think the one thing that I like about being from Hearne is that it's always home. I'm always a part of that community, and it always embraces itself around me.
That's good. Hearne does have a special way of embracing people always. Yeah. I love that. Number 2, what's the best piece of advice you received?
My dad has given me this advice since I was a little bitty. He says, you're no better than anyone else and no one is better than you. If they can do it, you can too, right? And so that's twofold, meaning that no one's better than you, but you're no better than anyone else. Like, humble yourself in that and treat people with kindness, right? But don't let anybody treat you like you're beneath them. And if they can do it, you can too, right? Like, go get it, as Chip Baker would say. And so I think that sits with me all the time. There are a lot of quotes that people have given me, but when I sit down and think about, like, can I do this? Or am I capable of doing this? I think about that, like, you're no better than anyone else. No one's better than you. If they can do it, you can too. So
yes. I love that one. Number 3, what's the worst piece of advice that you received?
I can't remember who told me this, but it was like, if it's hard, don't do it. If it's hard, that's God's sign that it's not for you. No, if it's hard, that's probably what you're supposed to do, is what I've learned, right? Like, the journey is not easy, but I had someone tell me, like, if it's really hard, if you're like really working to make it work, or if it's you have to do all these things and it's not for you, that's not necessarily all truth, right? So I think that encouragement was given to me, like, don't go for it if it's too hard. In some cases, I mean, you could take that, but there's a lot of things that I've had to achieve that were really hard. And so I think the worst advice is like, that was horrible. Some things are going to be hard. I think you have to be aligned with what God is telling you to do to know if that's the thing for you to do, whether it's hard or easy. That has nothing to do with anything. Alignment has something to do with everything. And so sometimes God is telling you to do hard things. Moses, right? Like, so you don't want to do it, but you do it. And so I think alignment is key. You have to be aligned with what God is telling you to do. And sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's hard.
Yeah. We got to get comfortable with stepping outside of our comfort zone. You know,
comfortable with being uncomfortable. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Come on, that's a word. Number 4, who was your favorite teacher growing up?
Oh, I cannot just list one favorite teacher. So I'm going to list them. I'm going to list the group of Blackshear teachers. So I'm going to say Miss Washington, Miss Davis, Miss McDaniel, Miss Williams. I'm going to group them. And then I'm going to say Miss Jones in high school, hands down, my favorite high school teacher. And then BZ was also one of my favorite high school teachers. She taught theater. I don't know if she was there when you were there.
I was like, I've never heard of BZ.
Yeah, she was a theater arts teacher, BZ. So those are like some of the teachers that I think about. And then Alice Sanders was not a teacher of mine, but she was one of my favorite educators. She embraced me a lot for the community. She wrapped her arms around me. So those are some of my favorites.
She's still doing that same stuff too, Miss Sanders.
Yeah, she's like, I love her.
Yes, we love you, Miss Sanders. And my last, Fast 5 question is, what's the most recent book that you read that made a big impact on you?
One of the things I've learned how to do is be intentional about everything I do. And so parenting is one of the things that I know nothing about. I'm learning as I go. Right. And so I decided to be more intentional about my parenting. And I think a lot of times as parents, we just learn as we go. And so this book called Unconscious Parenting really just helps you. It taps into who you are. And then that translates into how you are a parent. And then it challenges you to how to be a better parent and to embrace your child for who they are, like these little humans that they are, instead of trying to mold them into who you want them to be, right? And so Carson has a huge personality. He does things his way all the time. Rules are for him to understand before he abides by them, right? And so he is different from me in a lot of ways. And so, but I want to nourish that uniqueness that's in him. So I've decided to be very intentional about parenting him. So I've been reading Unconscious Parenting.
Unconscious Parenting. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right. And the last question is, if you would like to give, if you can give a shout out to someone from Hearne that you feel is putting Hearne on the map in some way, who would that person be? Or who is that person?
So I'm gonna do 2 people. First, Herbert O'Neill Jr. You need to get on here, get Hearne on the map. We need you on this podcast. So, but then I can't think about Herbert without thinking about Jarvelin, who is so subtle in her own way, who is an amazing educator, but also an amazing first lady, an amazing parent who loves the community, right? And so I think about both of them at the same time. And so shout out to Herbert, who will not allow me to call him anything else, and Jarvelin. I love them both.
Shout out to Herbert O'Neill and Jarvelin, Miss Jarvelin Robinson, 2 of my favorite people in the world. Yes. Well, Dr. Tonya Smith, I thoroughly appreciated this conversation. I felt so uplifted with your journey and the way you speak about healing and forgiveness and walking into purpose. Thank you so much for taking out the time to chat with me. Before you go, can you tell us how can we keep in touch or follow the work that you do?
Yeah, so I am not, my social media is LaTonya Smith, y'all. It's not like totally official, but I'm gonna work on something official to have a website and all of that for the first of the year. So it's LaTonya Smith, LaTonyasHanae. Follow me on Instagram. I'm developing my Facebook a little bit more, but for sure, most of my posts will happen on Instagram.
Woo-hoo. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tonya. I appreciate you, and thank you for putting Hearne on the map.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, y'all, thank you so much for watching Hearne on the Map with Jermichael Deshaun. If you could do me a huge favor, like the video, leave a comment below, or share it on your favorite social media platform. Hearne on the Map.